So, shall we talk about bringing a role or a project to a close today and that sort of finishing up and handing over and moving on?
Let's.
Let's talk about that. Because I've been thinking, I mean, some of our viewers may know, you guys know that I recently left a role I'd been at quite a few years at a university I've been at for almost 8 years, and yeah, the amount of work that suddenly you realize, oh, I was going to finish that, and I was going to do that, and I was going to, oh, I wanted to tell my friend, my successor, that these were the ambitions and to do this and to do this, and how unrealistic it is to finish all of those projects that are lurking in the back of your mind that you think, actually, I've run out of time on those. It's you have to be really strategic, don't you, with your focus and your energy.
Well, the last job I left, which was 5 years ago now, 4.5 years, it was the most productive 3 months of that job, I think, because no one was giving me any new things. I was just finishing stuff. It was great. I was like, finish this,
Oh,
finish that, finish
that
this,
sounds
finish that.
amazing.
It was good. And there wasn't an immediate plan to replace my role. So lots of things just got wound up, like they weren't being handed on to anybody.
Mm.
So I just like tied things up in a neat little bow and off I went. It was quite nice.
Yeah.
I find it really hard when I'm coming to the towards the end of once I've given my notice in, towards the end of a role, because I like to be needed, and I find it really difficult when I start to feel surplus to requirements or start to feel like I'm being counted out of things or like not put into things because I'm not going to be here. I find that really difficult. Um, because I want to say, well, use me while you've got me and everything, but obviously people are already kind of mentally moving on. Um, I like to do handovers more. There's the work, but as a manager, I like to do diplomatically and carefully, but essentially handovers with my team members, not just in terms of like stuff we're working on together, but a conversation with them about how they're going to communicate with whoever's going to be their manager next, particularly if they've got someone like as an interim for a period of time. Like,
Mm.
these are the things that we've worked on over the year that you'll need to kind of articulate to them. And I can do a handover. And is it okay if I tell them certain things about what's going on with your personal life or whatever it might be that we've discussed? So I have some consent from them to share certain things so that I can lay that groundwork with whoever's supporting them in the interim or whoever's taking over.
Mm.
Because that's what I worry about that quite a lot too. I think it's hard for them to feel a bit like a parcel being passed around, particularly if there is either no proper changeover or there's like this weird interim period or they don't know if they're going to replace you or whatever.
Mm.
So I try and focus that, and I always think although the work is important, it'll get done and things will go through, but I want the people to have a good experience when I go so that they feel like I'm not just cutting and running. I want them to feel like supported in their transition and at least equipped with some of the language and narratives to be able to explain things, at least in shorthand, to whoever's helping them. And also make sure I've documented any kind of alternative, like informal arrangements with people. So if you have an informal arrangement, for example, with a staff member that they always have to disappear at 3 o'clock to pick up a kid from school and they're gone for like 15 minutes because it's just down the road and that's all they need to do, but that's when they take part of their lunch break and that's part of your working arrangement. It's like make sure that's documented so they don't have someone else come in and say, put a meeting over there. I would always fit around those things because that's the stuff that really can get lost and makes the uncertainty really grow for those left behind.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. I should have thought of that.
Too late now.
Actually,
But
you two had some of the best advice actually when I was going into that notice period, and you think, God, 3 months is forever, and you go through this whole cycle of like, okay, I'm over it mentally, I want to be done, and then, oh my gosh, it's come too soon, I'm still like, no, I'm not ready yet. And then, but you both said, actually sit down with the calendar and count how many real working days you have. Take out the all-day meetings and take out your booked leave and take out, any holidays that are coming through, and count how many days you're actually going to be able to be productive. And that really helped me reset my my own expectations of myself, and then help me have that conversation with people about what they could reasonably expect me to deliver in the time that I was going to be
Mm.
still with them, and I was kind of pulled between being seconded to a really, really big project that was coming to an end and trying to wrap that up, and then also pulled back into the day job because I was trying to now suddenly hand over and document what I was going to need to tell whoever came after me. And yeah, it can be, you can find yourself documenting the stuff, it's the stuff that like that nobody else is going to know, and that's what you've got to prioritize. It's what, what would I be worrying about at this time of year or in December, or what are the things that nobody knows that you're looking for except you, because it's your responsibility rather than just something that you're
Mm.
accountable for.
Mm.
But yeah, it's an interesting approach, because you really have to think about the people and the who's. For me, it was focusing on the people that I knew that really have career aspirations, that I didn't want to get lost in the wash, that I wanted that, so putting lots of support in place and giving them signposting to resources I think they would find useful, and trying to connect them with people in my network, be like, talk to this person here, email this person, and get on this newsletter or this mailing list, and because normally those would be things that I would be sort of feeding to them. It's like, no, you're gonna have to do it yourself, because I don't know, I won't be here to look after it, and I don't know in all the other priorities that the next person is going to have, where they're going to, at what point they're going to be able to pick up that professional development piece again. So yeah, trying to equip people with the stuff. And funny, like you said, you don't want to be surplus to requirements. I kind of felt on the opposite side, with being asked to make decisions for the team or on behalf of the service, that I'm not going to be here to see it through, and so I can give my informed opinion, I can give you my advice about where I think what decisions should be made, but I'm not going to be here to enforce that. So it's kind of not for me to decide it. Like, the people who are going to be doing it in a way need to decide that, and kind of in this very odd, awkward limbo a little bit, because there's only so much that you can promise, because there were some changes happening to their enrollment, the in-person enrollment sessions, that I and another manager had agreed with this particular school last year. And of course, by the time enrollment comes around for them, neither of us are now there. So it was a slightly, I felt kind of bad being like, well, here, we've promised this on your behalf, but I'm not going to be there to support you through it. But it needs to be done, and this is why it was agreed. But yeah, you're not going to be there to defend your decisions anymore. So you just have to hope that the people who pick up the baton and run with it are going to understand the vision, and hopefully still see it through.
I've definitely been in teams where, a director or somebody has left, and all of a sudden all of these people come out of the woodwork with, well, so and so promised before they left ... and you can tell they're just really chancing their arm to see what they can get out of this moment of sort of leadership vacuum when that person stepped away and the new person hasn't arrived yet. I'm like, really though, that seems quite out of character for them to have promised that. I think we'll wait for the new person to arrive before we move on that. Yeah.
I also think there's something different about the sort of circumstances under which you leave, and I can't imagine how difficult it's been for colleagues who've left when they haven't wanted to. And because I haven't been in that position, but I have been in the position of leaving knowing that I'm not going to have, like, my post is going to be held vacant because of the difficult circumstances at the moment. And that's really difficult when that sort of loyalty you feel as a manager towards your team, feeling like you're leaving them in the lurch. And so for me, in my previous role, the team I left in the spring, my role wasn't necessarily going to be filled straight away, and then they had trouble with recruitment, and there was someone else was retiring, and I knew I was leaving them in a difficult situation. And then when we got to clearing this summer, which was 5 or 6 months later, I still felt the guilt, because it's a really peak time for us in admissions, and I knew that they would be running really short staffed. I knew how stressful some of them find it, and I felt that guilt still, for the people rather than the work. And I knew they would survive, and I know that I've survived those kind of hard things, and in some ways it creates vacuums and spaces for them to shine and to excel and to challenge themselves. But it also creates these really negative spaces, and it can be really hard to leave those vacuums. I think sometimes I mostly have always been ready to leave a job. Not, I might feel bad towards the team, but always ready. There's only one job I've left where I was really sad to leave, but I knew I'd kind of outgrown the role and wasn't getting as much enjoyment out of it. But it was what kept me there so long was the team, and that was really, really hard. Even more so because you talk about that 3 months. When you have a really good relationship with your team, with your manager, and you have worked hard on things like all the process documentation, calendar of events through the year, it doesn't take 3 months to wrap up. So I almost felt like in that role particularly, like I ended up going kind of back to the roots of the role, and like doing sort of the day job that sort of the officer, the more junior staff were doing, just to kind of be useful, and found a new love for it. And I was like, why am I leaving? And you do second guess yourself. The 3 months is a really, really long time. It's obviously a common notice period for managers. And it's a long time to like start second guessing yourself, and also to be thinking about, you can't share your excitement about your new role necessarily with your colleagues, people who you're around all the time, because you want to be like rubbing it in their faces. So it's a really, really weird transitional piece. And I can't imagine how difficult it is for colleagues who've had to put that information together when they're not leaving through their own choice. And that other colleagues, are in a position. I know some institutions and some friends of mine who've, applied for, say, voluntary severance, and the ones that are really good at their job have not been given it. And the more mediocre ones, or the not so well performing, have been let go through voluntary severance. So they've got the package of money, they've got to leave. The other guys are left behind with 3 times the workload. So that's really, really difficult. And or if people aren't giving you a good handover, and you think, well, why should I have to give them a good handover? So I think it's perhaps something a bit neglected. And it's silly, isn't it? Every time you get a new staff member in, every time you start a new job, everybody has to start from scratch. There's never much of a handover. Even the good handovers are a bit thin, and no one keeps it up to date. If you write a detailed handover, but they don't replace you for like 3 to 6 months, no one sodden keeps it up to date with what's happened in the interim. So the poor next person has to like knit it all together.
Hi gang, it's Fiona here. I'm just in the process of editing this video, and have gone over time with this conversation. So what I'm going to do is cut it here and make a second part to this episode. So look out for that. It will be here in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.